This week in Dorchester, the top stories are the growing concern about COVID-19 and the new vision for a waterfront skyline at Harbor Point. To fill us in is the managing editor and publisher of the Dorchester Reporter, Bill Forry. Thank you very much for being with us, Bill.
Hi, Chris. Good to be with you.
And good to see you again. Bill, I want to start with the coronavirus. We hadn't heard a whole lot of bad news about that in Dorchester, but as the mayor indicated just yesterday, things do seem to be getting worse. What's going on?
Yes, so the COVID-19 positivity rate in the city is climbing, and that's what the mayor was really broadcasting yesterday in his press availability. We're in the red zone again, and that happened overnight. The mayor warned of that yesterday. So the metric that we're really looking at is this the number of positive cases as people being tested. It's climbed from about 2.7% last week to 3.5 this week, but that's a citywide number. In Dorchester, parts of Dorchester, at least two of our zip codes, 02125 and 02121, are actually at 7%, well above the citywide rate. And basically on par with East Boston, which has been the hardest hit neighborhood in the city throughout the crisis. So that's very troubling. And the city has already kind of been anticipating that. I think they relocated a mobile testing unit for COVID-19 into Grove Hall last week. It's still there. They're encouraging people to get tested if they have any symptoms. And Dorchester as a whole, including 02124 and as I mentioned, 02125, 02122 as well, all of our zip codes in Dorchester are above the citywide average right now. It is of concern, and of course, as the city is thinking about moving into another phase of reopening, they're pausing that. The mayor, the big headline yesterday was, we're not going to move into the next phase of the state's reopening, and we're going to hold back and just keep it as even. It could get worse, and if it does, if we get about 4% citywide, the mayor has indicated in the past that he would consider retrenching on, for example, school hybrid reopening and ordering schools to go remote again. And so everyone needs to pay attention to this, take it seriously, and take extra precautions now.
02121 straddles the border of Roxbury, at least a historic border. And it wasn't so many weeks ago when you and also Black Boston COVID-19 Coalition, they were worried about the big parties that were going on around, it was around the time of Carnival at the end of August. Could that be feeding these numbers in some way?
Well, it could. And the mayor yesterday, I have to say, he took on, he was scolding people in the city for gathering in large numbers and going to house parties. And he wasn't being specific to any neighborhood, but he was clearly saying, look, we're seeing the numbers go up among people who are under 30 and under. That's where the biggest bump in positives are happening in that demographic. And so he was very specific about pleading with people, don't have house parties indoors or outdoors. We don't want people gathering in tight spaces. And for folks who are younger especially, take it more seriously, mask up, don't let your guard down, because right now we are seeing an increase, and that's going to affect everyone, including the possibility of losing access to indoor restaurants or bars or whatever, the things that, frankly, people of all age groups want access to. That may be a casualty if this continues.
Speaking of a different kind of density, there's at least a vision for redevelopment of the former Bayside Mall section of Columbia Point Peninsula. And I saw one of these bird's eye views. It looks almost like the second coming of the Seaport District, but that's not what the community wants, is it?
No, it's not. And I think, some of the initial feedback to the renderings that we published, and anybody can go look at them on our website at .news.com, or go to bostonplans.org, the BPDA's website, and review this project. It's called Dorchester Bay City. It's a 17-block, 5.9 million square foot of space, floor space, over 34 acres, Chris, right on Dorchester's waterfront in Columbia Point. As you mentioned, it was the Bayside Expo Center land is the dominant part of it. It also includes some what is now Santander Bank campus along Morrissey Boulevard. So those two together over the next decade under this plan would be redeveloped and built out. Right now, the Bayside lot is mainly empty parking space from what used to be the Bayside Expo Center, having been bulldozed now. UMass Boston owns the land. I should say the UMass Building Authority owns the land. And in 2010, they bought it for $18.7 million. Well, now the university 2 years ago decided to seek out redevelopment for the site, a private partner. They put out an RFP that had a number of responses. The winner of that was Accordia Partners, and that's the development group that came out last week with their major plan for this 180-page PNF, which outlines the project. And this deal will net, if it's built out to to completion, something on the order of $200 to $235 million that would go to the University of Massachusetts Boston. That's a huge yield, obviously, for them. What it means for the community is a whole new neighborhood, basically. The potential of thousands of new residents. There's about 1,740 units outlined as likely to be built in this space. Restaurants, office space, research laboratories, the potential there for maybe some more university uses on the footprint. But all told, a massive new infusion of jobs, of people, potentially of vehicles, which is something people are concerned about, but definitely of investment. This project is the biggest redevelopment project in my lifetime in Dorchester. And I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but I'm in the fourth decade, I'll put it that way. This is a long time coming, but the last project of this magnitude, I'd have to say, was citing UMass Boston here in the 1960s, Chris. So that's where we're on the trajectory here. It's a massive project. Last night was the first meeting of a community advisory committee, a 25-member group that's been assembled by the city of Boston to give oversight to this project. And over the next 2 months, we're going to see 5 more meetings, public meetings, all of them virtual, where people can get involved and have input in what this will actually look like. And to your earlier point, very few people I've heard from want it to look like the Seaport District. No offense to Seaport, but they do want it to have a distinct and more cohesive feel, something that's a little bit more stitched together with the existing neighborhood of Dorchester and South Boston, which is very close by.
I know this doesn't match the scale of Suffolk Downs, but given the history of UMass Boston in the Dorchester housing market, do you think there will be some pretty ambitious demands for this project to yield some affordable units?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Affordability is going to be right at the top, I think, of the CAC's list of requirements. And several people who are on the CAC come from groups like MAHA, Mass Affordable Housing Alliance, Dorchester. There's a housing reform group that's formed in Dorchester in recent years, and that are really demanding high percentage affordability units. So I think there'll be a lot of pressure within the group to do that. The market forces ultimately are what they are, and I think affordability will be hard fought in any project right now in the city, but it's right up there on the list, along with infrastructure improvements for the neighborhood. You know, right next to this site is Kosciuszko Circle, which is the bane of most motorists and pedestrian and bicyclists who have to move through this part of the city. That's the Rotary by UMass. And JFK UMass, MBTA station, which is outdated. Not to mention Morrissey Boulevard, which continues to be a problem, not only with climate resiliency and flooding, but with congestion when we get back to peak commute times again. So all of these things will have to be addressed as part of this massive undertaking.
I want to turn to some recognition for Dorchester Brewing Company, and you can tell me why, but I'm also intrigued about this whole combination of craft beer and built environment. I mean, why did they go together like this?
Yeah, well, this is a great story. I love this story because, frankly, I love this place. Dorchester Brewing Company was opened on Massachusetts Ave near Edward Everett Square back in 2016. It's obviously a craft brewery where people and small companies make beer there, very fine beer. And they had a tap room when they first opened. Now they've expanded. Last year in 2019, they did a massive $4 million expansion. They put a roof deck up there with an observatory, a new tap room. They also added restaurant space for M&M Ribs, which is a longtime Dorchester-based soul food place, great Southern barbecue. And the combination of these two places has been a great addition to the neighborhood. Of course, like everyone, they got hit hard earlier this year, but they are open. They're serving at half capacity. And but the building itself this week, Chris, won a prestigious award from the American Institute of Architects New England chapter. They give out regional awards for design each year, and they won one of them last week. The credit goes to Dorchester Brewing Company's team, Matt Malloy and company, and also to Rode Architects, who are also a Dorchester-based firm. They designed the building, which was an existing warehouse that was retrofitted. It's a terrific space. What's really cool about DBCO is it's just become a gathering spot for a cross-section of the city. And it's one of those places you go in and it's diverse. There's people from the Cape Verdean community, Vietnamese community, all walks of life, all gender identities. And so it's just a very welcoming Dorchester spot. And in a place that's changed rapidly, it's authentically Dorchester. They've branded it that way. They have the Dorchester Brewing Company apparel that you'll see a lot of places, including on my head a lot. They've been a huge asset. So this is a nice win for them, but it's also a win for the neighborhood.
Finally, I know you've got an op-ed from Senator Warren about the opioid crisis and the things that she wants the government to do in response to that. We don't have too much time, but why was it important to include this in the reporter?
Well, first of all, Senator Warren's office reached out to us and said, look, we want to get the word out about this. She's very concerned about an uptick in overdose cases across the country. 40 states have seen an increase in opioid deaths over the COVID period. And of course, it's still a very big problem in Boston. She has legislation to address it, wants to get the word out that we still have to be able to multitask here. We have a major epidemic going on, people dying in our streets from opioid addiction and overdose. And we need to be able to deal with that too. That's the point of her article, which people can read today at .news.com.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for reminding our viewers. And if they want to follow you on Twitter, where should they look?
You can follow the reporter at .news, and you can follow me at Bill Forry.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us.
You bet, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Bill Forry from the Dorchester Reporter.